we are going to do a little bit of a series on toy play. Hi everyone and welcome to our channel. So we are going to do a little bit of a series on toy play because one of the questions we get all of the time as dog trainers is how do we go about teaching our dogs to play?
From pet dogs to sport dogs, it's a really common theme that we see all of the time. So in this toy series, we're going to create a step-by-step guide on how to develop your play.
So the first step that we're going to cover in the series is how to pick a toy that will suit your dog the best. Before we go about actually selecting a toy, what I want you to think about is some observations before we begin. So at home, it's really common that our dogs will give us lots of information into the material type or the preference of the toy that they might like. So you may hit the jackpot. You may have like a toy pot at home in the middle of the living room and the dog may go back and forth and select like a particular type of toy all of the time. If that's the case, stop watching this video. You've got all of the information you need. Only joking. No, if that's the case, we've hit the jackpot and we know how we can then use that item, or we can explain how we'll then use that item to start our toy play. But if that's not the case, you may actually find that some of the information is manifested in problem behaviour. So for example, you may have a dog that's really cheeky and steals tea towels off of the side all of the time at home. So as much as that's showing it as a problem behaviour, it's also giving us some information into the material type that the dog might like. So that would be much more of a softer type sock material that the dog is interested in. Or conversely, you may find that your dog goes into the back garden, grabs onto the hose pipe, steals it and starts running around the garden. Again, it's a problem behaviour, but it would give us information that the dog prefers a more rubbery type material.
So a good example would be our dog Duca, who's a border collie. Do you remember when she was a puppy and she used to steal slippers all of the time?
She doesn't still do that at all.
No, she doesn't do that ever. So that showed me that she preferred more of a softer type material, even from a puppy. So now the sort of toy I'm going to choose for her is still a softer toy. So something like this would be ideal for her. I use this when I'm training or out on a walk when I do my recalls.
So for example, if your dog is stealing tea towels off of the cooker at home, what we could do is manage their access to tea towels and use the information when we select their toy. So we could select them something a little bit softer like the sock that I suggested earlier, or we could go with like a roadkilly type toy like the squirrel here.
One of the observations we make quite often is that people are selecting toys that are a bit too hard for their dog to grip onto.
Okay, so this is like a really common dog toy that you can find in most conventional pet shops. And if you've got a dog that's got like a really strong mouth, like a Malinois or a German Shepherd, Border Collie, even some Labradors and other dogs that are really strong and keen and enthusiastic on play, this will present absolutely no issue whatsoever. But if you've got a little baby puppy that's got a really soft mouth and they're trying to grip onto this toy, you can see that it's going to be quite challenging for them to do so. Yes, the middle part is arguably one of the softer parts, but what dogs will often end up doing is gripping onto the end because these knots here make it really difficult for them to make a nice firm grip. And then if we look at some of the other more conventional pet toys like this one here, it's easy in shape for the dog to be able to grip onto, but it's also really, really solid. And what you'll sometimes find is that the dog will start to readjust and grip and mouth it all of the time, which makes it really difficult for us to get into a tuggy type game with them. And then what you'll often find is like a ball on a rope like this. The ball itself is really solid.
All right.
But what often happens is because this is too solid for the dog to grip onto, the dog ends up biting onto the handle. And what I often see, and a problem people get in contact with us really regularly about, is the dog biting the handle and then accidentally biting the handler's hand. And that's often because the item, the ball at the bottom, is too difficult for them to grip onto.
And if you think of like a smaller dog as well, so someone like my Harvey, who's a Spitz, it's just too big to get in his mouth as well, isn't it?
And then it makes it so much easier for them to grip onto this, which is fine because that's a softer material type, but it's not fine if they're accidentally biting your hand.
Yeah, I don't need him biting my hand. So when selecting a potential toy for your dog, it's best to consider the 4 S's: substance, shape, size, and sight.
Substance, shape, size, and sight.
Substance, shape, size, and sight.
For the first S, substance, or the material of the toy that you're going to use, what I tend to lean towards is something a little bit softer and easier for the dog to grip onto. So something like one of these toys here, which also have a little bit of a squeak inside them. They're nice and soft and will be easy for any dog to grip onto. The next two S's are shape and size, and what we're really thinking about is ease of grip, or the dog's ability to grip on the toy nice and easily. So if we look at this type of toy, it's going to be pretty suitable across the board, unless you've got a really miniature or toy breed where it would be a little bit too big. But it's nice and soft, as we talked about earlier, with the substance. It's also an easy shape and size to fit into most breeds' mouth.
Now, if you think about this toy, for a larger breed, it might...
Chicken.
I know it's a chicken. For a larger breed, as they'll be able to grip on here or even lower down. Even on this part, they still will be able to grip on as they have a larger mouth. However, if we were to play with this toy with a smaller breed, then it might be a little bit difficult for them to get purchased, as down here is a little bit wide for their mouths.
And that's when we can end up with them biting on like the string part here. Or
so the toy itself becomes redundant, doesn't it? And they think more about the handle.
They might bite on to this little end here, which would be fine, but then it would be a waste of the rest of the item. So we really want to try to think about something that's a little bit easier for them to grip onto, the actual body of the toy. Also, when we're considering the shape and size of the toy, lots of toys come with extensions on like this, which I personally use all of the time.
Yeah.
But sometimes if we use a toy with an extension on to do the choice to chase test, which we're going to talk through shortly, we may find that if the body of the toy is unsuitable for the dog to grip onto, what they end up doing again is biting onto the handle. And that could be the case with lots of the toys that are my absolute favourites. So when I start off, what I tend to do is use again a toy like this that is big enough for the dog to be able to grip onto, the shape and size fits their mouth, or if I was going to use like a fluffier toy for a smaller dog, it would be one like this without a handle on it. If I was going to use a tennis ball, I would stick with a tennis ball by itself, and then we'd be able to switch over to a tennis ball on a rope a little bit later, because again, that's when the dogs develop this desire to bite onto the handle of the toy rather than the actual body. Again,
and they grab it and swing it around and hit themselves in the face.
Just like that.
Don't you see them do that all the time? I'm like, that's not the toy, that's the handle.
She's had too much fresh air today. Okay, so that's a problem that we come across all of the time. So if you stick with just like an independent item to begin with on the choice to chase test, which we're going to talk through shortly, that's ideal, because the dog then gets used to biting the body of the toy, whether it be a tennis ball, like a fluffy type toy, a roadkilly type toy, or something else similar. Ready! Competitor, are you ready? Gladiator, are you ready? Come on, let's go. Did you watch that when you was a kid?
Loved it. So the last S is for sight. So if your dog already really loves to play, then you might find that they're just as happy to play with something as boring as this sock. However, it is a bit boring. It's not your old sock, is it? But if you've got a dog who isn't as into toys and it's something you're developing, then you might need to pick a toy at the start that is a bit more visually pleasing. So something like this, a bit more fluffy, or the squirrel, just to help them along the way.
The question now is how do we take that information and put it into place to find out which toy might be our dog's favourite? So what I would do as a starting point is get 4 different types of toys. So we want something that's a little bit fluffy, like this. We want something that's a really nice, soft and easy to grip onto material. We want something that rolls like a tennis ball, and something that's rubbery like this cage ball. Okay, so we've got our 4 toys here that I've suggested. Alternatively to this, if there is a selection of toys that your dog likes at home or that they take out of the toy basket on a regular basis, we could put those into the mix as well. And then if your dog's a bit of a sock drawer thief and they steal socks regularly, or items or material types that they like, we could also add that into the mix as well. Okay, so one of the common errors that I see really regularly with toy play is that a person will get hold of this toy and they'll like wiggle it towards their dog, they'll try to flick them with it to get their attention. And for some dogs that are really driven by toys, they like that, they bite onto the toy and have a really good time with it. But for other dogs, what I see is avoidance. The dogs really aren't happy because what the person's effectively doing is waving the toy in the dog's face.
So this can be actually stressful for a lot of dogs who aren't that into toys yet. Rather than being motivating, it's actually stressful and doesn't encourage them to play with toys.
And what we really want to be able to do is to give the dog the choice in which toy they would prefer, and really base that on them making their own decisions, rather than us inadvertently and unintentionally so putting lots of pressure on them and try and get them to play. We really want them to be able to make their own decision.
So the way we are going to find out which toys our dogs prefer is via the choice to chase test.
Okay, so the first thing that we need to think about when we're arranging the choice to chase test is the environmental arrangement. If you look at where we are now, it's a pretty boring AstroTurf indoor venue with absolutely nothing going on. We want to try to pick as clinical an environment as possible where it's just boring and there's nothing going on. Because if we go to the park and there's dogs left, right and centre and people running around, it might be a little bit too distracting for most dogs. So we really want to set them up for success to begin with. So we've got like this school that we're using now, but you could just as easily do this in a corridor at home, with like the doors shut so that you've got a smaller area, whereas you can go about the choice to chase test. So we've got a little Jack Russell here, Isla, and obviously we already know which is her favourite toy, but what Marita's going to do is run through the choice to chase test. So basically we're going to start off one toy at a time and we're going to roll it back and forth to see which one she shows the most interest in. So off Marita goes. Oh, a little cable, she likes that one. There's that head shake thing Marita was talking about earlier. She brings it back quite nicely. Good girl. So we've got the one rep with that. Now Marita's going to switch over to the tennis ball. Oh wow, she picked that up as well. You can see the release is a little bit more easy for her on that one. Now she's going to switch over to the material item. And you can see she's showing no interest because she's drawn back to her favourite.
That's clear now.
Yeah, so Marita's going to go and pick up the squirrel, and now we're just going to try the last one with the little fluffy toy. Oh, and she's deferred that one as well. So the all-being favourite would be either the cage ball or the tennis ball. We know obviously that her tennis ball is her favourite thing to do, but she's more into fetch with the tennis ball at the moment than she is with tug.
Isla clearly demonstrated that she preferred the tennis ball or the cage ball compared to the softer toys that we threw out. We only did one rep with Isla as we knew she would clearly pick the tennis ball as she's our own dog. When you try this test at home, it would be better if you do a couple of reps with each toy so you are definitely clear which toy your dog prefers.
So what you might find at home is that your dog shows absolutely no interest in any of the toys that you roll out for them. But don't worry, we've got a solution for that. Stay tuned for the next video in which we'll cover that topic.
If you've liked this video today and want to see more videos like this in our toy series, then please subscribe to the channel so you can stay tuned. Thank you.
Bye.